Today I want to make a quick video to share with you what I believe is one of the most, if not the most, underrated form cue or form tip. It's something I've been really trying to incorporate into my form a lot recently. I find it to be kind of a hard thing to do a little bit, like even though it's not that hard in theory, but for me, I've had a hard time incorporating it. And I've also noticed that like pretty much every pro on tour that throws far does this to a T, like everyone. So it must be really important, but I don't see a ton of people talking about it, and I think it's really important. So I'm just gonna get right to it. The form cue I'm gonna talk about is the off arm. I think the rest of the body gets so much importance drilled into it. The power pocket, elbow position, hand position, grip. Two of the things that don't get talked about very much. The off leg is one of them, which I don't think is like super important, but is kind of important. The more important one I think is the off arm. And the reason I think it's so important is because when you do get into a coiled position, where your off arm is can change the space that you create for the disc quite a bit, and changes a lot about the, I guess, dimensions of your body as you're pulling through the power pocket and trying to create power. I know you can see how you have a lot of range of motion with your off arm, and having it in lots of different positions can create a lot of different results. So like I said, every pro seems to do this. I'll just pop a bunch of pictures on screen of pros being in this exact position with their arm tucked in right here as they're pulling through. Like 99% of touring pros do this. Now for me, I've been wanting to incorporate this because I am doing this wrong, or I have been doing this wrong for quite some time. What I tended to do was I correctly did what most people do, was when you're coming in, you use this arm to swing in and create power, right? You don't want to be just leaving your arm out here. As we know, physics tells us having mass tightly closer into our body is going to create a stronger rotation, where if we're having stuff hang out here, it's going to take longer for us to rotate around. So bringing that arm in is really important to creating a nice quick rotation. If we're just trying to create a quick rotation, who cares if we're here or here or here? That actually doesn't really matter for creating the quick rotation. So being out here to being in here, it doesn't really make much of a difference. But when we're coming in through this power pocket, if we're here down to our side, look at all this room I create for myself. My shoulder, the key thing here is my shoulder is out of the way. If I'm pulling my arm in, that shoulder comes in, my chest tightens up. I come in this closed position now because I'm already coming inside with the disc here, and then this arm is kind of getting in there and mucking up all that space that you need to have a nice open area to get that elbow forward and get all this room for the discs. Because again, when the disc gets in here, that's where you create the whip. That's where you see the arm explode out. That's why the power pocket is so important. But if we're getting in this space, we might have to come out here a little bit more to make room for that. It's also, I think, important for timing as well, but that's probably not as important as creating the space. So yeah, so kind of the thing that I would do is I would come in and I would extend this motion of coming in to across my body. I would just kind of keep swinging my arm in, and I would come across, and it would create this really closed off position. So the key, I think, to that is just drilling it a lot, but making sure that you come in and you're hitting the side of your body. I kind of like to think of either hitting like my hip or like my lower back side of my leg a little bit, or like getting my hand into my pocket and not trying to come across too much. It's okay if you come across like a little bit, but once we start coming into that area where the arm and the shoulder is coming across the chest, that's where we start causing a lot of problems. Now there are actually two ways you can do this. There's what I'm gonna call the Macbeth way, which is where you do actually bring it in across your body, and then you oppose the motion by kind of swimming out like this. So if you watch Paul throw, he will have his arm out, bring it in, but that's like while the disc is here, and then as the disc is getting to the power pocket, he's creating that space for himself like that, so that by the time he gets to the power pocket, that space is created by his arm being out and out of the way. The other way, I'm gonna call it just like the Gannon Buhr, because this is what I notice Gannon Buhr does all the time. The majority of people who throw far do this, is they kind of have their arm out here and they just come in and just slap the side of their body, and that just pulls it all in together. And that's pretty much it. Just trying to do that consistently. Obviously the timing is gonna be important. You do want your arm to come in at the right time so that things are moving quickly and efficiently. If you are gonna do that inside and out, you wanna make sure you're out of the way before the disc gets to the power pocket. I've tried both. I think I like just kind of getting it to the outside. I love simplicity in my throw, so anytime I can simplify things, I will. So getting just straight to that position, I think, is a lot better than trying to do this more complicated movement. You might get a little bit more torque and like rotation out of creating this opposing motion, because you can feel if you do that, it opens your shoulders a little bit. But I think at best that adds like maybe 5 feet of distance if you're doing it really, really, really effectively. So not really all that important. It's a lot easier to just replicate this thing right here. So I'm gonna throw a couple and I'm gonna try to do it the way that I used to, and then make the fix and go to the more correct way is what I'm gonna call it. And we'll try to see the differences between the two. Another thing actually that I found to be really apparent as I've done this better is I feel like when I do get into that position with the arm on my side, it might just be the amount of space that I'm creating for myself or just the contrast between what I'm used to. But it feels like when I do that, I'm not throwing the disc as hard, and I feel like I'm not getting as much power on it, but the disc goes just as far as when I do this and I feel like I'm crushing it. Which means it probably opens the door for more distance gains, because clearly I can eke out some more power in this position that I'm not as used to as opposed to this one. But I just feel like when I do that, I feel like every time I throw it, I feel like I didn't really throw that hard, and it goes just as far as normal, which is like, I think, a really good thing. If you feel like you don't have to throw the disc that hard and it still goes far, obviously you're doing something right. So let's get a couple throws in with the incorrect form, kind of just show you what not to do. So you can kind of see how I came in like this and it was just closed off. And I think what that also does is it creates early rotation, because you're not getting out here. Your shoulders are coming forward too soon, and you're kind of hitting the power pocket with your shoulders forward a little bit, where you want to be lagged back a little bit. We'll just do one more of those. Again, it feels like I'm throwing the disc harder than the other way when I do that, but I think it's because I have to throw it harder. I have to kind of get the disc out more and create more. It's like more strain on my body. I think really what I'm feeling is more strain, which feels like more power. It feels like I'm whipping the disc really hard. I think I'm just making it harder for myself though. So now let's get a couple throws with the correct form. Hopefully you can see the difference and kind of see me not having to try as hard, but probably having them go just as far. I think I did that right. Sometimes it feels like I did it right, and I watch it back on video and I didn't. So that's why I want to do a couple. But to me, I don't know if this came across on camera at all. To me, I didn't throw that as hard. It seemed to have more power, if anything, than the other ones, but it felt like I wasn't throwing it as hard. It really goes to show how important proper mechanics is. When you watch someone like Gannon Buhr throw and it looks like he's barely throwing it, it's because his mechanics and his timing are really, really good. And so he does everything kind of at the perfect timing. He doesn't really have to throw it that hard, because it's just gonna come out effortlessly because everything's working. If you made a machine that throws a disc perfectly every time, that's kind of what he's doing a little bit. That one, I think I definitely did right. I kind of felt my fist come down and hit this spot right here. Okay, I'm gonna do one more throw. I do wanna add one more thing, which is that I've noticed a little bit, and I think this is kind of up for discussion on how important this is. I've seen one player who seems to throw pretty far that does this the way that I don't really wanna do it, and then a lot of other players that do it this other way. And that is, when they come in, what I want to do is I want to leave this here, and I want this to stay here as long as possible, and then once the disc is out, I want to release it. Something that I do wrong sometimes is I kind of just come in, get to this position like very briefly, and then come out like this immediately. A player who does that a lot is Ezra Robinson. Is he losing power because of that? Maybe, I don't really know. Does he throw far still? Yeah, so it's like not clear how important that really is. But I do feel like when I think of a good throw and when I see a lot of players throw, it's that keeping things tight for as long as possible that seems to kind of get those last little bits of power out in your throw. So it's something I try to focus on a little bit, although it can be kind of easy to just let it go, especially for like a little upshot. Your arm's just gonna kind of want to follow through. So I'll go one more, make sure I'm doing it right. Okay, that was terrible. We're gonna go, not gonna turn it over. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's so much more effortless doing it that way. I don't know how much that comes across watching it in a video, but to me, it's just so much better. This will be my last sort of like little tip form video I'm gonna do this year. This is like the last piece of the puzzle for me when it comes to my form. I've done a lot of little tweaks here and there, and while I'm not perfect, there are other parts of my game I really want to work on a lot more, and this sort of getting the arm onto the side as opposed to coming across the body is pretty much the last thing I feel like I really got to work on to feel like my form is at a place where I'm actually really happy with it. That being said, I do want to do one more video where I talk about form as like a retrospective over the past 2 years of this channel, because I think my most popular video ever is a form video, and it's not a bad video by any means, but looking back on it, there's a lot of things I would say a bit differently and maybe different things I would say. So I want to do a video where I kind of do a retrospective, pick out like my most important form things as a retrospective, like looking at it as a whole, as opposed to like in the moment, this is what I'm working on. Because as I said, right now, I think my form is in a really good spot overall. So yeah, that's my last little form tip for the year. Look out for that other video. I think a lot of you will like it, and I'll see you next time. Peace.